Just coffee. Mum. That's what she said. But through the glass of the bank's private section, I saw my daughter-in-law push the file toward the advisor. I saw my son pay. He paid with my savings. An alert hit my phone, a portfolio setup fee for $25,000. They thought I wasn't watching. My name is Marlene Whitaker. I am 62 years old, and I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. This isn't just a city, it's my anchor, especially since Martin passed. My home is my fortress, a true adobe, thick-walled and quiet, with the original vigas crossing the ceiling. I value the tangible, the scent of pinon smoke in the dry air, the feel of the kiva fireplace warming my hands on a cool desert evening. And I value my retirement fund. I didn't inherit it. I built it. 30-plus years as a chief accountant, saving, investing, sacrificing. It was supposed to be my security, my peace. My son, Evan, is 33. He works down at Juniper Ridge Design, a good architectural firm. He's always been a good son, maybe a little too soft, but good. Then there is Sloane, his wife, 31. Sloane is a freelance brand consultant, a title that seemed to mean spending a lot of money on expensive lunches and clothing to maintain an image. She always spoke in buzzwords about legacy and optimizing assets. My assets. I was beginning to suspect. The call came just after 2 p.m. I was prepping ingredients for the green chili stew Evan loves. Hey, Mum. Evan's voice was quick, strained. Evan, honey, are you two on your way soon? About that. We have to cancel dinner. Something came up. I felt the familiar, small sting of disappointment. Oh, is everything all right? Fine, fine. He rushed. Sloane just needs to... We're just grabbing coffee with a friend. We'll reschedule. Sorry, Mum. Gotta run. The line clicked. Just coffee. The stew ingredients wouldn't last. I put them away, feeling the quiet of the adobe house settle around me. It was too nice a day to waste. I decided to head to the plaza, maybe pick up some fresh bread from the bakery and treat myself to the grocery store there. They always have the best produce. The high-altitude sun was sharp, bouncing off the pavement. I was parallel parking on a side street when I saw them. Not at a coffee shop. Not with any friends. I saw Evan and Sloane moving briskly, heading toward the discreet entrance of the Santa Fe Private Trust, a boutique bank I'd only ever read about. The kind of place that doesn't have tellers, only wealth advisors. My pulse didn't quicken. It just stopped. I turned off the car. I watched. They didn't look left or right. Sloane was leading, walking with that quick, purposeful stride she used when she felt she was about to close a deal. Evan followed, a step behind, his shoulders hunched. They disappeared inside. I should have driven away. I should have gone and bought my bread. Instead, I got out of the car. I walked across the street, pretending to look at the artisan jewelry in the window next door. The bank's main windows were frosted, designed for privacy. But from the angle by the doorway, through a sliver of clear glass near the etched logo, I could see the private banking lounge. I saw Sloane, sitting back in a plush leather chair, smiling at a man in a sharp suit. I saw Evan, leaning forward. The man pushed a thick stack of documents across the polished wooden table. Evan picked up a pen. He signed. Then, he reached into his wallet. He pulled out a debit card. I recognized the color. It was the card for the joint account, the one I'd added him to years ago. Just in case. Mum, he'd said. If you ever have an emergency, if you fall, I need to be able to pay for things. An emergency. He handed the card to the advisor. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I almost ignored it. My eyes locked on my son. But the vibration was insistent. I pulled it out. A text alert. From my primary retirement savings account. Fee notification. A portfolio setup. Fee of $25,000 has been processed. My breath hitched. $25,000. I looked up, through the glass. The advisor was handing the card back to Evan. Sloane was looking at Evan, but as he turned away from the advisor, her eyes slid toward the door where I was standing. She couldn't see me clearly through the reflection, but her expression, it wasn't a smile. It was triumph. Pure, undiluted triumph. Evan never looked up. He just stared at the table. They thought I was just an old woman, prepping stew, waiting by the phone. I drove home. I don't remember the drive. I must have stopped at the red lights and used my turn signal, but the entire trip from the plaza to my driveway is a blank. I parked the car in the garage, walked into my kitchen, and saw the ingredients for the stew still sitting on the counter, exactly where I'd left them. The house was silent. $25,000, a portfolio setup fee. People look at me and see a 62-year-old widow. They see the adobe house and the turquoise jewelry and probably assume I'm soft, a little slow, living on my late husband's legacy. They are wrong on all counts. For 30 years. I was the chief accountant for Coyote Homeworks. Not a glamorous job, but it was a good one. It was a local housewares company that grew from a single shop into a regional supplier. I wasn't just a bookkeeper. I built their entire financial tracking system. I was the one who found the 0.5% discrepancy in the freight invoices that saved the company $80,000 a year. I was the one who forensic audited the Phoenix branch manager and found the shell company he was using to skim. I know numbers. Numbers don't lie, and they don't get emotional. They just are. When Martin died, his insurance was adequate. It paid off the last bit of the mortgage and covered his expenses. It was never meant to be a windfall. My real money, the nest egg, was the one I built, the one I fed every 2 weeks, without fail, from my own paycheck for 3 decades. It was my discipline, my future, my independence. That's the account they had just hit. I sank onto a kitchen stool, the text alert burning in my mind. How did they even get access? The memory surfaced, slick and unwelcome. About 18 months ago, Evan had come over, alone. He looked stressed. "Mom," he'd said, fiddling with a coaster. "I was just thinking, you're here by yourself. What if something happened? What if you fell or had a medical issue and I couldn't access your funds to pay for a hospital or anything?" It was a reasonable fear. We all have it in this town. We see it. I'd need to be able to help. He'd continued. "Maybe. Could you make me an authorized agent on your main savings just for emergencies, so I can take care of you?" He'd seemed so earnest, so caring. My son, worrying about his old mother. I'd softened. He brought the paperwork the next day, already filled out. I glanced at it, saw the words, authorized agent, and I signed. I had been foolish, blinded by a mother's trust. Sloane wasn't always so sharp. When she and Evan first started dating, she was all sweetness. She'd bring me artisan bread, compliment my garden. But after the wedding, the glaze wore off. My home wasn't historic, it was dated. My savings strategy wasn't prudent, it was stagnant. You have to live large to build a brand. Marlene, she'd told me once, swirling a glass of wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Money that just sits there is dead. You have to make it work. It's about optics. Then came the temporary loans. It started small. A few $100s here for a networking dinner. 1,000 there for a deposit on a working retreat in Sedona, which looked more like a spa weekend to me. I'd given in, wanting to be supportive, wanting to believe in my son's happiness. But the small loans became designer furniture for their rental, detox juice cleanses, a down payment on a new car. They never seemed to be paid back. I thought of my neighbour, Tara. She's 55, a single mum who raised 2 kids on a teacher's salary. We were talking over the fence last spring. "You're too nice, Marlene," she'd said, pruning her roses. "I don't let anyone, not even my kids, have my full routing and account number. You give them that. You give them the keys to the whole house." At the time, I'd thought she was being cynical. Now, I saw it as a prophecy I'd ignored. Had my love for Evan become a form of financial blindness? Had I become the cliché, the lonely widow, so desperate for her son's attention that she'd let his wife fleece her? No. The anger was rising, but it wasn't the hot, explosive kind. It was cold. It was precise. It was the same feeling I got when I knew the numbers on a balance sheet were lying, and I just had to find the proof. They thought I was weak. They thought I was unaware. They had mistaken my love for stupidity. I would not confront them. I would not call Evan and scream or cry. A scene would do no good. Sloane would just spin it, paint me as a hysterical, controlling old woman. I went to my office. I pulled out my old ledger book, a habit I never broke, and a fresh legal pad. I logged into my computer. I was an accountant. It was time to open the books on my own family. The first thing I did was log into my bank. Not just the savings account, but all of them. The checking account, the small money market account, the joint account with Evan. I set the filter to 12 months. I downloaded every statement, PDF, CSV. I didn't care. I wanted the raw data. I started with the big one, my retirement savings. There it was. The $25,000 portfolio setup fee from today. But it wasn't the first. My highlighter hovered. 3 months ago, Family Trust Services fee, $10,000. 6 months ago, investment setup consultation, $5,000. They had been testing, starting small, seeing if I'd notice. I hadn't looked. I had trusted. Then I moved to the joint account, the one he was supposed to use for emergencies. It was a blizzard of small transactions, but I wasn't looking at the small ones. I was looking for patterns. I found one. A recurring transfer. $2,950. Every month. For the last 6 months. My accountant brain kicked in immediately. The amount was deliberate. Any transfer over $3,000 often triggers a secondary review or a fraud alert. This was designed to fly under the radar. It was structured. This was not panic. This was a plan. Where was it going? The transaction description was vague. Ocotillo Fund. I opened a new tab. I searched the New Mexico Secretary of State Business Registry. It took me 30 seconds. Ocotillo Family Growth Fund, LLC. Formed 7 months ago. The filing address was a UPS store mailbox. My fingers were cold on the keyboard. I paid the $12 fee for the official formation documents. I downloaded the PDF. Registered Manager Sloane Whitaker. My breath left me. I scrolled down. Signatory on behalf of investors. Evan Whitaker as attorney in fact for Marlene W. Attorney in fact, not authorized agent. Those two phrases are worlds apart. An agent can help with an account. An attorney in fact is you. They can open, close, and drain accounts. They can sign contracts. They can sell property. The paperwork I signed. The one Evan said was for emergencies. What had I actually signed? My mind flashed back to the bank, just hours ago. The reflection, Sloane's look of triumph. I fumbled for my phone, my hand shaking now. I had taken a picture. I don't even remember doing it. It was a single, blurry photo, taken from my hip through the window, but it was enough. I zoomed in. The documents Evan was signing were blurred, but on the table, next to the suited man, was a brochure. The title was sharp. The Private Yield Portfolio. And under it, a tagline, leveraging all your assets, including real property. Real property. My house. I pushed back from the desk and went to the study, to the small, fireproof safe hidden behind a framed photo of Martin and me at White Sands. I hadn't opened it in almost a year. The code was Martin's birthday. The metal door hissed open. It smelled of old paper and dust. I pulled out the file marked personal. Inside was my will, Martin's death certificate, the deed to the house, and the file for Evan. The document I'd signed for him was supposed to be in there. A simple, 2-page limited power of attorney, specific to one bank account. I remembered the blue folder. The blue folder was gone. In its place was a thick, professionally bound document. The cover sheet read, Durable Power of Attorney. My name was on it. Evan's name was on it. I opened it. The powers granted were not limited. They were broad, comprehensive. He could do anything. Sell my home, manage my investments, change my beneficiaries. I looked at the signature page. My signature looked right, but it was shaky. I didn't remember being shaky that day. And the date. It was written over. A 3 had been turned into an 8. Then I saw the witness lines. There was one witness I didn't recognize. The second witness, the signature was familiar. A looping, confident M. Martin Whitaker. My husband's signature. My husband, who has been dead for 5 years. They had taken an old document, a greeting card, a letter, and forged his signature onto a legal document that gave them the power to steal his home, to steal my life. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. The grief was so cold and so sharp, it froze everything else. I walked back to my desk. I placed the fraudulent POA on my scanner. I scanned every page, front and back. I saved the file. I named it PO Fraud PDF. I uploaded it to a secure cloud drive. I copied it onto a new USB stick. I put the USB stick in my pocket. I put the original document back in the safe, exactly as I had found it. The books were open. The audit had begun. I couldn't stay in the house. The forgery of Martin's signature was a different kind of wound. It wasn't just theft. It was desecration. I am not a hysterical woman, but I am a grieving one, and they had weaponized my grief against me. I knew I couldn't do this alone. An accountant knows the numbers, but I did not know the law. My neighbor, Judge Harold Kavanaugh, was my first call. Harold is 78, retired from the district court, and walks his dog past my house at 7 a.m. every morning. Sharp. He's a widower, and we have a standing arrangement, my zucchini bread for his legal anecdotes. I called him at 7:30. Harold, I said, my voice flat. I'm afraid I have a situation that is not hypothetical, and I don't have any bread. He was at my kitchen table in 10 minutes. I didn't give him the printouts. I gave him the USB drive. I told him the story, from just coffee to the forged POA. He listened, his steepled fingers against his lips, his gaze fixed on my face. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he was silent for a full minute. "Marlene," he said, and his voice was no longer the friendly neighbor. It was the judge. "These are not amateurs, but they are arrogant. That is their weakness. Your strength is that they believe you have none." He slid a business card across my table. "You will not call Evan. You will not call Sloane. Your next call is to this woman, Delia Monroe. She's a barracuda, but she's the only one I'd trust with this. Tell her I said it's a code 114. She'll know what it means." I met Delia Monroe at 1 p.m. Her office was glass and steel, overlooking the city. She was maybe 40, wore a knife-sharp suit, and moved with an energy that demanded the air get out of her way. I laid out the bank statements, the LLC filing, the scan of the fraudulent POA. Delia didn't coddle me. She didn't offer condolences. She looked at the evidence. "This isn't just a civil case. Marlene," she said, her eyes scanning the forged signature. "This is felony forgery. This is financial abuse of a protected person. They didn't just take your money. They impersonated your dead husband to do it." She leaned back. "So, we build a 3-layer plan. Layer 1. We cut off the supply. We revoke the POA and freeze the accounts. Layer 2. We prepare for the civil suit to claw back the money. Layer 3. She looked at me, a wolf's smile. "We set a trap. They think you're clueless. We need them to confirm their actions, on the record." "The bank," I said. "They just let it happen." "The POA looks good at a glance," Delia said. "We need someone on the inside." I thought. Miguel Garcia. He's not in private banking, he's mid-level. He helped me roll over Martin's accounts when he passed. He's a good man." Delia found his direct line. I called. "Miguel, this is Marlene Whitaker. I have a concern about my accounts. I am seeing transactions I did not authorize, specifically related to Sloane Whitaker." There was a heavy sigh on the line. "Mrs. Whitaker, I cannot tell you how glad I am you called. Ms. Whitaker's activity has been aggressive. She calls daily, spinning funds between accounts. I've had suspicions, but that POA tied my hands. I am placing an internal warning on your file right now. Nothing moves from Ocotillo or your savings without your direct verbal consent." On the drive home, I stopped and bought a prepaid phone. Just as Delia instructed, I installed only my banking app on it. I set the alerts to the loudest, most jarring tone I could find. "Now, the Grey Rock," Delia had said. "That's your job. You are boring. You are non-reactive. You are a sweet, slightly confused old woman who just wants to have dinner. You are the rock. They will break themselves against you, trying to get a reaction. Do not give them one." That night, I called Evan. My voice was light, practiced. "Evan? Honey, I've been so worried. I haven't heard from you. I made way too much green chili stew. Can you and Sloane come over tomorrow night? Just a simple dinner? I want to clear the air. I feel like we're drifting." He hesitated. I heard Sloane's muffled voice in the background. "Yeah, Mum," he said, his voice strained. Sure, we can make that work. Around 7. After I hung up, I went to my desk. I found the small digital recorder I used to use for my accounting seminars. New Mexico is a one-party consent state. I was a party, my home, my rules. I taped it securely under the overhang of the kitchen island, right where they would be sitting. My last call was to Harold. "Judge," I said, "dinner is tomorrow at 7. I'm serving stew, but I'll be baking an apple pie for dessert, the kind with the cheddar cheese crust you like." There was a pause. "Marlene," he said, "that sounds wonderful. I might just have to stop by, to borrow a cup of sugar." They arrived at 7 p.m. on the dot. Sloane was wearing a crisp white blazer, carrying a bottle of wine that probably cost $200. Evan just looked tired. He gave me a brief, tight hug at the door. "Smells good. Mum?" "It's your favorite," I said, playing the part of the slightly fussy, loving mother. I was the rock. Boring, grey, solid. I served the stew at the kitchen island, right over the hidden recorder. I kept my movements slow, my voice light. We talked about the weather. We talked about a new gallery opening. Evan pushed his food around the bowl. Sloane, however, was in her element. She had come with a purpose. "Marlene," she said, setting her wineglass down. "I'm so glad we're doing this. Evan and we've been worried about you." "Worried?" I feigned surprise, ladling more stew into my own bowl. "Whatever for I'm healthy as a horse." "Financially, Sloane said, leaning in. "Your portfolio. It's just sitting there. It's stagnant. In this economy, money that just sits is dead money. Marlene, it's losing value every single day." Evan winced at her choice of words, but said nothing. He stared at the wooden countertop. Evan and I were discussing it. Sloane continued, her voice smooth and practiced. "And we really think you should convert your savings into a proper living trust. It's so much better for optimizing taxes. And, of course, I would be happy to manage it for you. As part of the Ocotillo Fund, it just simplifies everything." This was it. The pitch. She wasn't just stealing. She was applying for the job of managing my entire estate. I looked at her, my face a mask of mild, elderly confusion. "Oh, I said. "That sounds so complicated. A trust, I don't know the first thing about that." I turned to my son. "Evan, is that what you think?" Evan couldn't meet my eyes. It's just an idea, Mom, for tax purposes." "Well, heavens," I said, playing the part. Do I need to sign anything?" Sloane's eyes lit up. She was too quick. She reached for the expensive handbag at her feet and pulled out a sleek, leather-bound document folder. "It's funny you should ask," she said, with a bright, false smile. "I actually brought the preliminary paperwork, just to look over." She was sliding it across the counter toward me when a heavy knock echoed from the front door. "Oh, goodness," I said, standing up. "Who could that be?" Judge Harold Kavanaugh stood on my porch, holding a foil-covered pie dish. "Marlene!" he boomed. I apologize for the intrusion, but my apple pie came out a masterpiece, and I couldn't bear to eat it alone, and I seemed to be completely out of sugar. "Harold," I said, feigning delight. "You are no intrusion. Come in. Come in. I have my son Evan and his wife Sloane here." I introduced them. Harold, with his white hair and judicial bearing, commanded the room just by entering it. He shook Evan's hand and gave Sloane a polite nod. "Sloane is a brand consultant. Judge," I said, pouring him a coffee. "And she manages a family fund. Tell him the name. Dear. It's so unique." Sloane's smile tightened. "The Ocotillo Family Growth Fund." Harold took a sip of coffee, his eyes sharp over the rim of the mug. "Ocotillo," he mused, tapping his chin. Strange name for a company. Ocotillo is a peculiar plant. It looks dead most of the year, but it's just waiting, sucking up resources others can't reach. Not a very trusting-sounding name. Is it? Sloane's face, for a flicker of a second, went completely blank. She was rattled. Right on cue. A jarring, electronic tone burst from the pocket of my apron. The burner phone. "Oh, my stars," I said, fumbling for it. This newfangled thing. I looked at the screen, letting my eyes go wide. "Oh, dear. This must be a mistake. A bank alert. It says, Desert Branding Retreat attempted a charge of $4,800. What on earth is that?" Sloane, who had been pale, turned ashen. She knew that transaction. It was the test Delia and I had set up. A charge at a fake merchant account, designed to be just under the $5,000 auto alert threshold. But Miguel at the bank had flagged it manually, as promised. That's probably just spam. "Marlene?" Sloane said quickly, her voice a little too high. "You think so?" I looked at Evan. "Evan, you know about these things. $4,800. That's so specific. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? You're the only one who can help me with emergencies. You used that paper I signed for you. Right. Mom? Evan looked like he was going to be sick. He was cornered. I don't know." "What POA?" "The power of attorney, dear," I said gently. "The one you had me sign. Which one was it you used for all this?" "We used the standard one." Sloane snapped, jumping in to save her floundering husband. "The old one. The one you signed ages ago. It's all perfectly legal. Marlene." I reached into the utensil crock on the island and pulled out a simple wooden pencil, the kind with an eraser. I rolled it between my fingers, aiming the tiny, pinprick-sized camera lens at her face. "The old one?" I asked, my voice still light. "The one for emergencies." "Yes," Sloane said, exasperated, falling for it completely. "The durable POA, the one that gives Evan power to act on your behalf. It's what families do. We are helping you." "The durable one," I repeated, letting the pencil capture her admission. I set it down on the counter. "I see." The rest of the dinner was a blur. They didn't stay for Harold's pie. Sloane claimed a sudden migraine. Evan wouldn't look at me as they left. After the door closed, Harold let out a long breath. "Well," he said, "that was quite the performance. Marlene." "I just wanted to clear the air," I said, picking up Sloane's wineglass. "Oh, you did more than that," he said. "You set the house on fire, and you've got the recording of her holding the match." I nodded, feeling no triumph, only a cold, heavy resolve. "Yes. Now, let's have some of that pie. Tomorrow is going to be a very long day." "Marlene," I said to myself, stacking the dishes. "Stop talking. Just have the coffee." But I knew, and they were about to find out. The coffee was bitter. At 8 a.m. the next morning, Delia Monroe was not drinking coffee. She was filing motions. The first was an emergency petition to the court to immediately revoke any and all powers of attorney, valid or otherwise, bearing my name and Evan Whitaker's. The second was a temporary restraining order, filed against Ocotillo Family Growth Fund, LLC, freezing all its assets and prohibiting any transfers related to my accounts, pending a hearing. At 8:45 a.m., Miguel Garcia received a faxed copy of the court filing. As we had planned, this gave him the legal cover he needed. He placed a hard, internal hold. Any transaction in or out connected to my social security number, any account linked to Ocotillo, or any attempt by Evan or Sloan Whitaker to access funds now required a direct, recorded phone call and verbal password confirmation from me. A password I had set with him, one that Sloan would never guess in a million years, Coyote Homeworks. At 9:30 a.m., I was at the Santa Fe Credit Union. It's a different kind of place, quieter, with carpets and tellers who have worked there for 20 years. I was opening a new account under their Elder Protect program. By 10:15 a.m., I had transferred 90% of my liquid assets from my old bank, leaving only a small, calculated amount behind. The nest egg was now in a different nest. The fallout was immediate. At 11 a.m., my old phone rang. Sloan. I let it go to voicemail. 11:02 a.m., a text from Sloan. Marlene, we need to talk. The bank is making a huge mistake. 11:05 a.m., another text. This is a misunderstanding. You have to call them and fix this. They've frozen my Ocotillo account. You're ruining my business. 11:10 a.m., a text from Evan. Mom, please, call Sloan. She's hysterical. I sat in my kitchen, the phone buzzing like a trapped wasp on the counter. I just watched it. Delia had instructed me not to answer. She will escalate, Delia said. Let her. Let her panic. At noon, Sloan called my house phone, screaming into the answering machine. Marlene, whatever you did, you need to undo it. Now you don't understand what you're messing with. I am trying to help you. At 1 p.m., Sloan showed up at my house. I watched her on my doorbell camera, jabbing the bell, her face a mask of rage. I did not answer. Finally, at 3 p.m., the text I was waiting for arrived. Fine. You want to be difficult? I will have my lawyers handle this. Now, Delia said over the phone. Now you call her, not your lawyer. You, but I'm on the line. Muted. I dialed. Sloan picked up on the first ring. What? She barked. Sloan, dear? I said, my voice shaking just a little, for effect. I'm so confused. My goodness. My lawyer. This woman. Delia. She's done all this. I don't understand it. It's all just moving so fast. Sloane's tone shifted instantly. She smelled weakness. Marlene? Thank God. This Delia is a hack. She doesn't understand modern finance. She's going to cost you a fortune. Look, fire her. Meet me. Just me and you. Let me explain what's really going on. Let me show you how to fix this. Oh, I don't know. The cafe by the plaza. 1 hour. Just us. We'll fix this. Marlene. Just us girls. The us girls meeting was at a table in the back of the cafe. Delia Monroe sat at the next table, back to us, wearing sunglasses and reading a newspaper, a cup of tea steaming in front of her. She was my witness. Sloan was already there, with a folder. She was all business. Okay, Marlene, she said, not even ordering coffee. This is a simple liquidity problem. Your lawyer overreacted. I've been managing your assets to get you a 22% yield, but to do that, I have to move fast. These holds are catastrophic. You need to call the bank, lift the hold, and fire Delia. If you do that, I'm willing to overlook this temporary lapse in judgment. I leaned in, playing the confused old woman to the hilt. A 22% yield. My goodness, that's amazing. Sloane, I'm so confused. You're my manager. I thought I was just helping you. Marlene, I used the POA to set you up as a silent partner in the Ocotillo Fund. It's what families do. We all rise together. A partner, I said, nodding slowly, letting the recorder in my pocket capture the word. So, that's why you're taking management fees out of my savings account every month. Sloane's eyes narrowed. It was the bait. How? How did you know about those? I saw them on a statement. Sloane let out an exasperated sigh, finally taking the bait. Of course, I'm taking fees. How do you think this works? I'm not a charity. You're a limited partner. Limited partners pay for the management that's making them money. Got it, Delia said. She stood up from her table, folded her newspaper, and walked over. Sloane's face went from confusion to pure, unadulterated horror. Ms. Whitaker, Delia said, her voice cutting through the cafe's quiet murmur. Thank you for that clarification. She took a single 8x10 photo from her bag and slid it, face up, onto the table between them. It was a high-resolution scan of the POA signature page. Martin's forged signature was circled in red. You're a limited partner, Delia said, in a fund that was capitalized using a fraudulent document, specifically forgery of a deceased person's signature. That's a first-degree felony. Sloane didn't speak. She didn't breathe. The blood drained from her face, leaving her a waxy, pale grey. She stared at Martin's name. Our meeting is over, Delia said. You will receive a settlement offer by end of day. To expedite that, I'm going to need you to email me a summary of our conversation, confirming that you set Marlene up as a partner, confirming that you've been acting on her behalf. Sloane was trapped. She fumbled for her phone. Send it now, Delia commanded. Sloane's fingers, shaking, typed a rambling, desperate email. She was trying to spin it, but she was too scared to lie. She hit send. Delia's phone chimed. She read the screen. Thank you. This will be very helpful. She pointed to a line in the email. Especially this part, Sloane had written, in her panic. As I explained, everything I did was to help her, and we used her POA to expedite the process for her own good. Delia and I walked out of the cafe, leaving Sloane to stare at the picture of a dead man's name. He came alone. It was 2 days later, just after dusk. I saw his car pull up, the headlights sweeping across my living room wall. He didn't text first. He just appeared, like a ghost. When I opened the door, I didn't see my son. I saw a man hollowed out, his shoulders slumped, his face pale and stubbled. The confrontation with Sloane at the cafe had sent the shockwave, and he was the debris that had washed up on my doorstep. Mom, he said. His voice was a croak. I didn't hug him. I just stepped aside. Hello, Evan. Come in. We need to talk. I led him not to the kitchen for stew, but to my office. I was no longer playing the confused old woman. I was Marlene Whitaker, chief accountant. And this was an audit. I had the spreadsheet I'd prepared on my computer screen. I'd also printed a copy. I laid it on the desk under the lamp. Sit down. He sat. This is a reconciliation. Evan, I said, my voice cold and level. Here is a list of 18 withdrawals from my accounts over the last 12 months. He looked at the paper. His eyes scanned the columns. Date, amount, description. Mom, I explained. He started. The setup fees, the trust, Sloane said. Look closer, I commanded. I pointed to the third item. This $5,000 consultation fee. That was you. I recognized the transfer code. I pointed to the fourth item. This one, for $4,800, labeled branding. 2 days later. That wasn't you. Was it? He stared at the page, his confusion warring with a dawning horror. What, no? I didn't know about that. She was making parallel withdrawals. Evan, you'd take 5,000, and she'd go in behind you and take another 4. Skimming. She wasn't just working with you. She was working you. He shook his head, a low moan escaping him. No. She wouldn't. Wouldn't she? I clicked the mouse. The small speaker on my desk hissed to life. It was the audio from the pencil. Sloane's voice, bright and arrogant, filled the quiet room. This bag. Oh, it's a client relations write-off. It's a PR expense. We have to look successful to be successful. It's for the family's image. Marlene's money is finally working for us, instead of just sitting there. The audio file clicked off. The silence was heavier, more terrible than the sound had been. Evan put his head in his hands. He wasn't just crying, he was collapsing. The sobs were dry, racking his body. She made me, he whispered, the words muffled by his palms. She hounded me for it, for the POA. She said I was weak, that I didn't love her if I didn't trust her, that she would leave if I didn't get serious about our future. I was afraid of losing her. Mum, I was so afraid. I watched him. My son. The boy I had taught to ride a bike. Now a man broken by a fear I couldn't comprehend. I felt a flicker of pity, but it was extinguished by the cold, hard fact of Martin's forged signature. I don't need your reasons. Evan, I said. This is not a therapy session. This is the part where I give you the terms. He looked up, his face red and blotchy. Terms. 1. You will start mandatory financial and personal therapy. I will choose the therapist. You will pay for it. 2. You will sign a legally binding repayment agreement for every cent you personally transferred, plus interest. 3. You will have no further contact with the Ocotillo Family Growth Fund. You will sign anything Delia puts in front of you to dissolve it and cut your ties. Those are the conditions. Mom, please, he begged, his voice cracking. This is my marriage, my life. I just need time to think. No. My voice was granite. I do not need your apologies. Evan, I need boundaries. The ones you tore down. I am rebuilding them, and they are made of stone. You will not get time. You will get a choice. Son. Judge Harold Kavanaugh spoke from the doorway of the office. He'd been in the living room the whole time, waiting. Evan's head snapped up, his face pale with new, different fear. Harold stepped into the room. not as my neighbor, but as the man who used to wear the black robe. Your mother is offering you a civil solution, Evan, Harold said, his voice quiet but carrying the immense weight of the law. You should listen to her, because what you call being afraid of losing your wife, the district attorney will call conspiracy to commit fraud, financial abuse of the elderly, and complicity in forgery. Your mother is offering you a repayment plan. The state will offer you 5 to 10 years. The colour drained from Evan's face. The fight didn't just leave him, it was surgically removed. He stood up, his limbs shaky. He looked at the spreadsheet. He looked at Harold. He looked at me. I will, he stammered. Whatever. I'll call Delia. I have to go. He walked out of the office. He walked down the hall and to the front door. He opened it, and for the first time in his entire life, he left my house without hugging me goodbye. The door clicked shut. Harold and I stood in the silence. It was a terrible, cold, and absolutely necessary moment. The bond was broken, but the foundation of the house was, for the first time in a year, secure. Delia did not believe in neutral ground. She insisted the meeting be held in my living room. She called it a financial settlement and signing. It was, in fact, a trap, staged for an audience. At 10 a.m., my living room was set. Judge Harold Kavanaugh and my neighbour Tara sat on the sofa, pens and notepads in their laps, introduced as impartial community witnesses. A laptop on the coffee table was already logged into a Zoom meeting. In the centre of the table, a professional-grade digital audio recorder was running, its red light a tiny, unblinking eye. Just for the record, this meeting is being recorded, Delia announced to the empty room, her voice crisp. Sloane arrived at 10:05, not alone. She brought a man in a silver suit who looked more like a car salesman than an advisor. This is Mr. Vance, my financial counsel, Sloane said. She looked at Harold and Tara with pure disdain. I didn't realize we'd be performing for a studio audience. Marlene, this is highly irregular. She was trying to project power, to take control. She still thought she was the smartest person in the room. This is not a negotiation, Ms. Whitaker, Delia said, standing. This is a final presentation of facts before we move to a criminal complaint. Please, sit. Sloane's smugness faltered. She and Vance sat. Evan was also present, sitting in a chair by the door, as required by Delia's terms. He looked like he hadn't slept. He looked at no one. Delia began. She didn't use a projector. She used a simple, large whiteboard. Let's begin with the flow of funds. She drew a box. Marlene's retirement savings. She drew another. Ocotillo Family Growth Fund, LLC. One by one, she laid out the evidence, the bank statements, highlighted, the LLC filing with Sloane's name as manager, the blurry photo from my phone of them at the bank, the email Sloane had sent from the cafe, where she'd written, "We used her POA to expedite." You claim all actions were to help Marlene, Delia said. But the help was expensive. She played the audio from the pencil. Sloane's voice filled the room, boasting about a designer handbag being a PR expense paid for by Marlene's money. Mr. Vance's face tightened. He was realizing he was not here as counsel. He was here as a witness to a confession. And now, Delia said, we come to the how. She turned to the laptop and unmuted the call. Mr. Garcia, are you with us? Miguel's face appeared. I am. Mr. Garcia, can you state your position? I am a vice president of client relations at Santa Fe Private Trust. And can you confirm that on October 8th, Sloan and Evan Whitaker opened a private yield portfolio funded by a $25,000 transfer? I can. And on what authority was that transfer made? On the authority of this document, Miguel said. He held up a copy of the fraudulent POA to his camera. A durable power of attorney, listing Evan Whitaker as attorney in fact. We have since determined the witness signature of Martin Whitaker to be fraudulent, as Mr. Whitaker has been deceased for 5 years. Our internal legal team has voided this document and flagged all related accounts for felony fraud. Sloan exploded. You can't. That's a violation of privacy. He's lying. Evan, tell them it was your idea. He's the one who signed everything. She had done it. She had turned on him. Evan, who had been a statue, slowly looked up. He looked at his wife. Delia didn't look at Sloan. She kept her focus on Evan. That's an interesting point, Delia said. She pinned my spreadsheet to the whiteboard. Evan, we've discussed the transfers you admitted to making, but let's look at the others. Sloan, perhaps you can explain these parallel withdrawals. She pointed to the string of $2,950 transfers, the ones that came days after Evans, the ones he knew nothing about. Evans stared at the board. The final piece of his denial crumbled. He finally saw that she wasn't just his partner, he was her mark, too. Sloan just stared, her mouth open, speechless for the first time in her life. I stood up. I walked to a large canvas sheet I had hung on the wall. You were right about one thing. Sloan, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. You were very concerned about my assets. You called them stagnant. Dead money. You wanted to make them work. I pulled the sheet away. It was a large, laminated chart, professionally printed. At the top, in bold letters, it read, The Marlene Whitaker Irrevocable Trust. As of 48 hours ago, I said, my assets are no longer my assets. This house, the land, and every remaining dollar of my savings are now the property of a third-party managed, ironclad, irrevocable trust. You cannot leverage it. You cannot borrow against it. You cannot optimize it. You cannot touch it. Ever. Mr. Vance stood up, gathering his briefcase. We're done here. Not quite, Delia said. Ocotillo Family Growth Fund, LLC, is hereby given notice of forcible dissolution. We are initiating clawback proceedings for every unauthorized transfer. All funds will be repaid to a restitution fund. Evan has already signed his repayment agreement. You, Ms. Whitaker, are next. Sloan stood, grabbing her bag. This is insane. I'm leaving. I wouldn't, Delia said. A man who had been waiting on my porch stepped inside, ushered in by Harold. Sloan Whitaker, he asked. Sloan, pale and shaking, nodded. The man handed her a thick legal envelope. You've been served. Sloan ripped it open. That, Delia said, providing the narration, is a legal demand letter for full restitution, a court order barring you from accessing any of Marlene's accounts, and a notice of intent to sue for fraud, forgery, and financial elder abuse. You have 24 hours to have your attorney contact me. Sloan looked at the papers, then at me. The brand consultant was gone. All that was left was a common thief, standing in the house she had tried to steal, holding the bill. The world did not end. It just reset. Violently. The consequences were not a single thunderclap, but a rolling storm. Sloane, predictably, went public. Not with the facts, but with her version. She posted a long, tear-stained video on her branding social media account. She spoke of toxic family dynamics, of elderly manipulation, and how old-school thinking was trying to sabotage her success. She was the victim, a young entrepreneur being crushed by a vindictive, controlling matriarch. The post got traction for about 6 hours. Then, a comment appeared from a new, professional-looking account, Miguel Garcia, VP Client Relations, Santa Fe Private Trust. It was short, cold, and utterly devastating. As a matter of public record, Santa Fe Private Trust can confirm that Ms. Whitaker's business accounts, including the Ocotillo Family Growth Fund, were frozen due to documented fraudulent activity and not, as she claims, due to a family misunderstanding. Our internal review was concluded prior to any family involvement. He hadn't broken confidentiality. He had simply stated a fact that completely torpedoed her narrative. The video was deleted by sundown. Evan, meanwhile, vanished. I heard from Judge Harold that he had moved out of the expensive rental he shared with Sloane. He was in a small, furnished studio apartment by the highway. He had hired his own lawyer, a public defender. At first, then a low-cost independent counsel. And he had, as per our agreement, begun therapy. Delia received Sloane's first official offer. It was insulting. A proposal to repay a fraction of the money in tiny monthly installments, spread over 20 years. It came with one unbreakable condition, a gag order, a non-disclosure agreement that would silence me, Delia, and even Harold, forever. Delia called me. It's a nuisance offer. Marlene, she's stalling, but I have to present it. Tell her no, I said immediately. Even the gag order, it's standard. Especially the gag order, I said. This isn't just about my money anymore. Delia? She's not the first Sloane, and I'm not the last Marlene. I'm not staying quiet. I hung up, and I made a call of my own, to the Arroyo Senior Center. I told the director I wanted to host a small, informal talk. She asked for a title. I said, How to Read Your Bank Statements Like a Detective. 2 weeks later, a check arrived in my mailbox. It wasn't a personal check. It was a cashier's check. The amount was for $20,000. It came with a single, handwritten note on lined paper, not a greeting card. It was from Evan. It said, This is from my car and my 401k. It's the first payment. I am in therapy. I am not asking you to forgive me. I am just starting. Evan? It was the first time I cried. Not for the money I had lost, but for the son I was finally seeing. He wasn't begging for grace. He was showing receipts. The storm continued for Sloane. My complaint, combined with Miguel's internal bank report, had triggered a separate investigation. Those PR expenses, the designer bags, the desert branding retreats, they had all been claimed as business deductions on her taxes. The IRS, it turned out, was very interested in the difference between a business retreat and a spa vacation paid for with fraudulent funds. The day before our first civil court hearing, the doorbell rang. It was late. After 9 p.m. It was Evan. He looked thin, but his eyes were clear. He wasn't the broken man who had wept in my office. He wasn't the hollowed-out ghost from the night of the confrontation. He was just a man. "Mom," he said. He wasn't asking to come in. He wasn't there for comfort. He was holding a thick, stapled document. He held it out to me. I took it. The cover sheet was from the New Mexico District Court. "I just wanted you to have a copy," he said. It was his petition for divorce. He had filed it that afternoon. He hadn't come to beg. He hadn't come to apologize. He had come to file a report, to show me another receipt for the work he was doing. "Thank you." "Evan," I said. He just nodded, turned around, and walked back to his small, old car, leaving me on the porch, holding the first real sign that the war, for me, was over. The battle, for him, had just begun. The county civil court was not dramatic. It was beige, smelled of stale coffee, and was run with a brutal, bureaucratic efficiency. There were no outbursts. There was just Delia Monroe standing at the lectern, methodically building a prison of facts. She didn't give a speech. She presented a matrix of evidence. "Your Honor," she said. "Exhibit A, the original bank statements showing 18 unauthorized withdrawals. Exhibit B, the fraudulent, durable power of attorney, dated October 8th, 2023. Exhibit C, the death certificate for the second witness, Mr. Martin Whitaker, who passed away 5 years prior to that date. Exhibit D, the email from the defendant, Ms. Sloane Whitaker, where she admits, and I quote, 'We used her POA to expedite the process.' Sloane's lawyer, a different one from the silver-suited Vance, tried to spin it. 'Your Honor, my client was simply acting in what she believed was the best interest of the family. She was optimizing her mother-in-law's stagnant assets.' The judge looked at him, unimpressed. 'Counselor, is that what you call forgery optimizing?' Before he could answer, Judge Harold Kavanaugh, who had been allowed to speak as an amicus curiae, a friend of the court on the standards of fiduciary care, rose. He wasn't speaking as my neighbor. He was speaking as the law. 'Your Honor,' Harold said, his voice filling the room. 'The standard for an attorney in fact is not optimization. It is absolute, undivided loyalty. The best interest of the family is a meaningless phrase. The agent has a duty only to the principal in this case, Marlene Whitaker. What we see here is not a misjudgment. It is a calculated, systematic breach of that sacred duty for personal enrichment. It is theft, plain and simple.' The judge's decision took less than 10 minutes. He ordered Ocotillo Family Growth Fund, LLC, to be immediately dissolved, its assets liquidated. He issued a judgment against Sloane personally for the full amount she had siphoned, including the parallel withdrawals, plus penalties and interest. He issued a permanent restraining order, barring her from ever managing, advising, or contacting me about my assets again. The tax penalties, the fines, they all fell squarely on her. Her investment advisor, Mr. Vance, was officially reprimanded by the state board for his role in facilitating the fraudulent bank meeting. In the hallway after, Evan sat at a separate table with his own counsel and signed his own agreement. He had agreed to repay his portion over 5 years. Delia had added a clause if he ever breached the financial boundaries we had set. The full remaining amount would become due immediately, with interest. He signed it without a single change. I sat on the wooden bench, waiting for Delia. I reached into my bag and pulled out my old family ledger, the one I'd had for 30 years. Tucked inside the back cover was a letter, the envelope thin as an onion skin. It was from Martin, written a year before he died, after his first heart scare. I'd never had to read it. Until now. His handwriting was a scrawl. "Marlene," it said. "If you are reading this, I'm gone. And you are facing a fight. I know you. You will try to keep the peace. You will try to hold everything together for everyone else. Don't. If a day comes when you must choose between keeping the peace and respecting yourself, you must always choose self-respect. It's the only thing we own. You are stronger than you know." I folded the note and put it back. Outside, the air was sharp, the sun bright. Evan was standing by the steps, alone. He didn't move toward me. "Mom," he said. His voice was steady. "I am going to make the first payment on the 1st of the month." He took a breath. "I'm not going to ask you to forgive me today. I don't have the right. I'm going to earn it. By the month. By the therapy session. I will earn it." He didn't try to hug me. He just looked me in the eyes, nodded once, and walked away. I went home. The house was quiet, but it was my quiet. I walked through the kitchen, out the back door, and into the small studio I had always meant to do something with. I opened the windows, letting the smell of pignon and dust blow through. I found a small, wooden sign I had painted years ago. "Sunset Rise Bakery," it said. I hung it on the door. Then I took a small, square piece of cardstock and a black marker. I wrote, in my clearest accountant's handwriting, "No transactions via power of attorney accepted." I tacked it to the wall inside, a reminder for me and for the world. I picked up my phone. I sent a text message to the group I had started at the Arroyo Senior Center. "Hello, ladies," I typed. "This is Marlene. Just confirming our next workshop. Financial Self-Defense, Part 2, is next Tuesday at 10 a.m. This week, we're covering irrevocable trusts." I put the phone down. I looked out the window at the high desert sky. The knot, the one that had been twisted in my chest for over a year, was finally, completely undone. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please, let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I would love to hear your thoughts and share this space with you. Make sure you subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach more people who need to hear it.